This book is bad. Really, really bad. Well, for the players it is. Hi there fellow roleplayers and game masters, my name is Mr. Tarask and this is still your go-to YouTube channel for anything tabletop RPG, and today I want to take a second look at Scartlet Citadel, the book, the old school dungeon crawl by Kobold Press, because I did a review of this a while ago, and with a while ago I mean like years ago. I think when I was still in my mom's place, in my studio at my mom's place, and there I said it was one of the best, if not the best, old school feeling dungeon crawl for 5th edition I've ever laid my hands on and my eyes on, and I still stand by that point. As a matter of fact, I want to make this video to reinforce that point. Sadly, I have so many books in my possession and I review so many books that I don't get to play every single one of them, so I don't get to really experience them always. A lot of them I use and a lot of them I just don't get to use. Now this has been sitting on my shelf for quite a while for me to find a good opportunity to present this to my players, to send their player characters into a big ass mega dungeon with its own sub story and its own subplots and all of that, and the accompanying town of Red Tower and all of that stuff. Now I finally had that chance, and the Scarlet Citadel is even bigger than I expected. It is even harder than I expected. It is even better, well designed than I expected, and its atmosphere is much more gruesome than I expected. And I'm not sure all of my players really knew what they were going to get themselves into when I said we were going to do an old school dungeon crawl. Now I want to make sure to set the scene correctly here. This is not a review video, this is more a video of me explaining what we did with the Scarlet Citadel and what I think is amazing about it and the stuff that I enjoyed about it the most. Now, me and my hardy group of adventurers, we decided to rent out a cabin which looked more like a fantasy tavern than an actual house, an hour and a half drive, which is pretty far in Belgium, away from my house, to spend the entire weekend having some pretty damn good food, some pretty damn good drinks, and a shit ton of D&D, of course. Now, me being the greatest game master in the world, I of course timed it absolutely brilliantly that the start of the first game we played in said cabin was the arrival of at Red Tower, the town that sits in the vicinity of the Scarlet Citadel and functions a little bit like a place to get back to get some much needed rest, some much needed supplies, some much needed information, and to not be killed by an ooze once in a while. On top of that, I brought myself a little Bluetooth speaker that I could use to play a little bit of atmospheric dungeon or town or tavern music, depending on where the player characters were at that point. So the setting to play and start playing a typical dungeon crawl with its own little mini subplot and all of that going on couldn't be better. Now, really quickly, if you do not know what the Scarlet Citadel is basically a old school feeling dungeon crawl with, of course, the new school mechanics from 5th edition, which aren't really new school anymore, but you know what I mean. And it is meant to be set in any world, in any campaign. It has its own village, the village of Red Tower, which is extremely well designed, by the way. It has its own dungeon with its own subplot, and you can use that dungeon and that subplot in order to squeeze that in anywhere. For example, what I did is my players all have a dinosaur egg, and they do not know which dinosaur is in their egg. So they all have probably a separate dinosaur in their eggs, and they want to go all the way to the south of Midgard because there is a dinosaur country there, a dinosaur reserve in a sense there, where they can get more information about their dinosaur eggs and how to hatch them. To get there, they need transportation. They want transportation, they want to get an airship. The only people in Midgard who have airships are the Ironcrag Dwarven clans, but they don't really want to give them an airship. So they're doing a bounty for them. And the bounty is all the way down in the Scarlet Citadel by the name of Scarlet the Gruesome. Scarlet the Gruesome is a mage who is absolutely I don't know, possessed by lore. He wants to know everything there is to know about void magic, about shadow magic, about gray magic, about ring magic, about the universe, about the multiverse, about whatever there is to know, he wants to know. So he settled himself all the way down in the Scarlet Citadel. That wizard, that lore keeper or whatever you want to call it, is built into the Scarlet Citadel. They don't give a real reason like why anybody would want to go and kill them, except for like, hey, there's a really powerful wizard obsessed with lore in the bottom of the Scarlet Citadel, and you can come up with whatever you want in order for the players to have a reason to go and kill him. I found a reason because my players won an airship from the Iron Crag clans, and the Iron Crag clans have a bounty on Scarlet the Gruesome. Basically, that is the main story, and that is the reason why my players are going into that dungeon. Now, the second part, besides Red Tower, the city of Red Tower, which is absolutely well built, there is the dungeon itself. And the dungeon itself has 5, if I'm not mistaken, layers. There's 5 levels that go down. Every level, of course, becomes much harder than the first one, and there is a ton of different characters and secrets and traps and monsters for the players to encounter, and everything. It is not like a dungeon like, I don't know, Undermountain, and you just toss some random shit in there. No, everything is so well designed and interconnected, it absolutely blows my mind. For example, there's a part in the dungeon where the players, there's a god statue, and the players can trigger a gas trap, and this gas makes them go berserk and attack each other. They survive from that, all fun and games. They go down a level, like a session or 2 sessions later or whatever, they actually find the mechanism that sets off the gas. They actually find the room where the gas is made and where the gas comes from. And they also find the person who is doing their own research, who is are also living in this dungeon because they don't want to be bothered in their research by outsiders, by adventurers, by monsters, by common people. So they set themselves in this dungeon, they're doing their research, and they have this little, I don't know, this little back and forth with Scarlet the Gruesome. And Scarlet the Gruesome is like, hey, if you can settle in my dungeon in like the first floor, the second floor, you can settle there, do your research on to very strict, you know the word that I'm looking for. First of all, share your research with me. Very important. If you share your research with me, you can be in a dungeon. Also, set some traps. I don't know, some oozes, some gases, all of that stuff. Set that stuff up so that less people bother me and my research. In return, you get the safety of a dungeon. You know where every trap is. You know where every monster is. And you can get your own little room or big room or whatever to do your research. And I get bothered less. That is basically how Scarlet the Gruesome works, and how all of the bad guys and all of the creatures and all of the parties actually end up in the Scarlet Citadel, which makes it a complete shitfest of different characters, but they all make sense being there. And if you know me, you know that I like using suspense as a storytelling mechanic. My players went into the Scarlet Citadel. Well, they went to the Scarlet Citadel, the above ground level, which is a ruined citadel, which has been sitting there for thousands of years, and they encountered an owlbear. Now, I don't have the owlbear see them. The owlbear is actually digging into something, like under some rocks or something. It's searching for something. And my players, of course, thought it was like a rabbit or a raccoon or something it wanted to eat. So they snuck past the owlbear to find the official entrance of the first level of the dungeons of the Scarlet Citadel, and they went in there, of course, potentially triggering some traps and fighting some other traps. And the first part of the Scarlet Citadel is absolute old school horror. And if you know me, I do not like horror unless I'm at the storytelling end of it. I don't like being at the receiving end of it, but I like being at the storytelling end of it. There is a person in the first levels of the Scarlet Citadel who goes by the name of the Jailer. And the Jailer is nothing more than an old school absolutely bad serial killer who drags people from their homes and from the woods and from whatever that he can find them, tosses them in jails, underfeeds them, tortures them, potentially kills them, but he makes it really slow and painful. So the first part of the dungeon, I played some really suspenseful music in the background, and they found a jail with like one of the survivors, but she was like in a really bad situation. And then they came into like this room. There was this round room where there are chains hanging from the ceiling, and there's all kinds of like humanoids hanging from the chains, and they all got killed and they all got hung there, and some are losing limbs and other have broken bones or broken fingers or stuff like that. Of course, and like in the middle of the round room, the ground goes a little bit like this, like dome-shaped almost, but in a negative way, like not like this, but this. And in the middle there is this round hole that if you peek into it, it is complete pitch darkness, even for people with dark vision. That's how deep it is. They can just look a little bit further, but not far enough, right? Of course, one of my players, Sam, decided to toss a stone into the pit, making a lot of noise, and a few, I think 5 of them, dire vampire-ish bats flew out of it and started attacking the players in the middle of this room with dead people hanging from chains. To make matters worse, the people hanging from chains started to come alive-ish. They started grappling the players, so the bats got more of an opportunity to attack them, putting a disease on somebody, really hurting the party in general. And of course, this also tells the story after the combat. People come to the realization that you could, or that the jailer probably hung these people alive, like hooks through their ribs or something like that, dropped them from this pit all the way to like the lowest level or the second to lowest level or something of the Scarlet Citadel, to have them be eaten alive by dire vampire bats in pitch black darkness. Like dropping somebody in a tank of piranhas, like Temple of Doom style, like that kind of horror, right? So there is no moral to the story. There is no like, oh, are we fighting for the good guy? Is there like a moral thing here? No, the guy is just bad news and he needs to die. Of course, my players find him. He's really scary. He's really strong, but they kill him, and they get this first sense of accomplishment in this dungeon, which is like the first part of the dungeon, which was the official part of the dungeon under the Scarlet Citadels, which were the dungeons. And then there is the secret passageway, which is open. They can just see it because it used to be a secret passageway. And that's part 2 of the first level of the Scarlet Citadel. Now, I really like how this first part is like, there is a serial killer and the players start like asking questions like, why is this serial killer, why is he allowed to be here, and why has nobody yet killed him? Now Scarlet the Gruesome, of course, the guy who runs the thing, he's like, hey, he's a serial killer, he does his thing, I just look the other way, because as long as he is there, 99.9% of people will die in the first room of the Scarlet Citadel. The fact that they're tortured very slowly to their death, well, it's just a matter of like setting your priorities straight, right? Now, after the section where the jailer runs the town, the players get into a more somewhat empty version of the dungeon where there are a lot of rooms with like old forgotten gods, worship places for old forgotten gods. And there's actually a person that runs that part of the dungeon, but my players didn't encounter them because they started the dungeon with the idea of let's 100% this dungeon, right? And then they fought the jailer, and then they were like, nope, we're getting to the fucking bottom of this as fast as we fucking can, so we can get the fuck out of here as fast as we fucking can, right? So all they did was encounter some more torture rooms, some oozes that one person almost died from, the gas that didn't do anything against them because they all saved from it. They also got trapped in a room, almost like a rat trap almost, and really funny, they created like there was this pole in the dungeon that held the floor up, right? And they knew if we pull this back, we'd probably create a second entrance or a second exit, which it was absolutely meant to do. So they did that, but in return, an owlbear fell from above in the dungeon. So they also encountered an owlbear in a dungeon. Not a lot of people can say they encountered owlbears in dungeons. Also, the owlbear ate the axe of the main fighter of the group. Now I have a question for you. Do you want to see a somewhat episodic series of videos where I talk you through what happened in the Scarlet Citadel? My players are planning on running through the Scarlet Citadel, and I really want to get deeper into this, and I'm playing it anyway. So if you want to get more information about this, what happened to my players, what happened to my party, what I thought as a GM was amazing, what I used from the book, what I made up myself, all of that stuff, I'd love to do so. And if you want to see that, make sure to hit the thumbs up and put that in the comments. Answer in the comments, do you want to see a video series like that? Would you watch that? Because I would really like to create that if you would watch that. Until next video, bye bye.